wanted to do this conversation tonight because I want an opportunity to acknowledge my teacher and my mentor. I think that, you know, too many of us in the art world now, it's sort of a competitive environment where people are always trying to do something new, and they're always trying to establish their identity, and in some fashion that does not acknowledge their lineage. And what happens is that the tremendous wealth that we would be accumulating by now is lost when you keep cutting yourself off from your past. I have a deep respect, and you've transformed my life in some pretty phenomenal ways, which we can talk about. And so I want to say that for me, this is very specifically a conversation about mentorship and about teaching and about women and art.
Thank you, Suzanne. You never know which students are going to succeed, and I have often been wrong. And I was totally wrong about Suzanne. Suzanne applied. She was a 25-year-old psychology major, and she told me she wanted to be in this class because she wanted to, quote, be creative. I, like, cringed.
Took me a year to figure out what you meant by that. Well, you know, we were in a particular era, 68 to 71, and the entire country, it seemed like, was sort of coming alive with various movements. The feminist movement, it was a follow-on from the civil rights movement. And I was working in race relations, and when there I met Faith Wilding. And Faith was an activist as well as an artist. I was not. And she said, hey, you know, there's this interesting thing happening next year, and I think you should be part of it. Faith and I had basically started the Feminist Art organizing at Fresno State just, I think, the semester before you came, by sticking up posters all over the campus saying, women, come and meet. And so they all came and met. And there were like
the 70s.
There were like 40 of them. This was actually 69. There were like 40 of them. And we sat and looked at each other because we had not planned for 40 women. And we sort of looked at each other and said, well, what should we talk about? And Faith says, well, let's talk about sex. And we said, that was it. And we started, really, the consciousness raising there. I was in psychology grad school and teaching class in feminist or women's psychology, you know, furious at Freud. So it was an era when there was a lot of kind of ferment. But what I saw in what Judy was offering was a kind of passion that was, and a kind of fullness of expression that made a lot of sense to me.
That it was, from the beginning, a content-based pedagogical method. Find your content, then select the media that best expresses that content, and if you need to, develop the skills to mistress that medium. This is exactly how I work. And it was only much later that I began to really understand that generally, because after years and years and years of working with women, that very often it is content that motivates women, whereas for men, it's usually form or technique. You know, and for that year, we basically focused on what women thought, taught, did, and created. And as an antidote to having spent all those years before entirely studying men.
I think what was revolutionary was not just the kind of female-centric version of what a vision that you have, but I also think it was that you taught us a sort of empowerment. We were all sitting around in a living room, and everybody, it was Fresno, we were wearing sandals. And Judy looks around at our sandals and says, okay, the next assignment is to go out and get work boots. I was so in love with my work boots. I wore them everywhere. They gave me such a sense of power.
I think this is eventually going to be established, that the 70s ushered in a historic change in that it introduced for the first time the possibility of women working openly out of our experiences as women. For example, when you think about the fact that up until 1971, when I did Red Flag and the menstruation bathroom for Woman House, there had never been an image of menstruation in Western art. I mean, there was only absence is what there was. Absence. Absence of our experiences, absence of our perceptions, absence of our point of view. I think one of the tenets of feminist art, as certainly as I was interested in seeing it develop and tried to practice myself, was that the work needed to address issues that people cared about in a way that people could understand, with the goal of making change.